Holger Rune made a lot of headlines this weekend for an unfortunate reason. I'll give some updates on Holger's heartbreaking injury from Stockholm, highlight the title winners from this past week, and talk about Frances Tiafoe's major team shakeup. Hello, my name is Christian Bassnight, and welcome to Christian's Court, where I cover tennis from all angles. If you have not yet already, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you are notified whenever I post more update videos. Holger Rune, he just cannot catch a break. The 22-year-old Dane suffered a season-ending injury to his Achilles during his Stockholm semifinal on Saturday. Rune led Ugo Humbert 6-2, 2-all, 40-30 when he pulled off on a forehand in pain, and he looked to be in excruciating pain. He grabbed at his Achilles and was seen by a physio, but they couldn't do anything to really help him, and he was helped off the court and later gave an update to his social media where he said, "My Achilles is fully broken on the proximal part, meaning I need an operation already next week, and from here, rehabilitation. It's going to be a while before I can step on court again. It's tough. I had so much joy on court in Stockholm, and it's unbearable to think that I would not feel this energy for some time now. Thank you for all your support now and always. Without you, nothing would be the same. See you all as soon as possible." This is just a rough injury for Rune. A ruptured Achilles tendon typically takes 4 to 6 months to heal for a return to sports, although a complete recovery may take up to a year or even longer. We may see him back at the beginning of the clay season. That's about 6 months from now, so hopefully he comes back healthy. And I just really don't want Holger, though, to become a tragic what could have been story, because he had great promise, especially in 2022 and in 2023, where he had those 2 really strong seasons. But ever since then, he's kind of tailed off. And just in addition to some tight, close losses, Rune has had a tough go at it this season with health concerns. In Acapulco, he withdrew due to a stomach issue. And then Monte Carlo, he had an illness. In Madrid, he twisted his knee during the warm-up. And then at the DC City Open, he suffered with a back injury. And then in Stockholm, of course, this Achilles. And that's not counting all the health issues he had this season. But on the bright side, maybe some time away from the sport can help him, and maybe Holger can come back with a new perspective on the game and ultimately fulfill his potential, which is very big. Rune's injury, though, it seemed to inspire a discussion of whether the tour needs to be amended as far as his calendar. Jack Draper tweeted, "We have so many incredible younger guys on the tour right now, and I'm proud to be a part of that. However, the tour and the calendar have to adapt if any of us are going to achieve some sort of longevity." Taylor Fritz responded with, "Facts. Also seeing more injuries and burnout now than ever before because balls, courts, conditions have slowed down a lot, making the weekly grind even more physically demanding and tough on the body." Both Jack and Taylor are very valid, especially Taylor with the different balls and courts factor that he brought up. But some players, like Jack, for example, are simply just injury prone, period. And Jack, he was actually forced to end his season after the US Open due to an arm injury. It is complicated because the tennis season is notoriously very long, but I think that's just the nature of the game, and I don't think that's going to change. We have a lot of different players on tour to account for, and they need to eat too. And some of these tournaments after the US Open is big for them to gain more points. So I don't think that they need to cut out those tournaments. I think how it's structured right now is fine, because also it's not only the players you have to account for, but the tournaments themselves and the cities too. I talked more about this in depth, more specifically concerning the women's tour, which I think has an even more demanding and a little bit unrealistic of a calendar compared to the ATP. Make sure you tune into that video, by the way, when this one is done. But the women, they're required to play in 6 500 tournaments, and they have 10 back-to-back 1000s. Meanwhile, the ATP only requires its players to play in 4 500 tournaments, and that requirement goes down to 3 if they play in the Monte Carlo Masters 1000 tournament. The women also receive 0 pointers in the ranking for each 500 level tournament they fall short of that unrealistic 6 500 requirement. And the first few ranking point deductions were implemented today with the new rankings. Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff each dropped 10 points from their opening round losses in Doha, and they played each 3 500 level tournaments. Iga Świątek, she played in 4 500 level events. She dropped 65 points in the rankings from her Rome round of 32 exit. And then Madison Keys, who also played in 4 500 level tournaments, dropped 54 points from her Auckland run earlier in the season. reason. Next week, Iga will likely lose 108 points from Stuttgart, while Arena is likely to drop 120 points she earned from the 1000 tournament in Dubai. Now back to the Draper and Fritz discussion, I think the issue is even worse now, with many of these 1000 tournaments shifting to being basically 2 weeks long now, and that just makes things more physically and mentally demanding for these top players. But like Novak Djokovic has said, true change only comes about with action, not just lip service or complaints online or in the press. We'll see if the players eventually band together and do something in the near future, but honestly, it's kind of unlikely, I feel. Now, talking about all the title winners that we had from this past week, there were quite a few, and the biggest winner was Elena Rybakina. She claimed the Ningbo 500 tournament, and this was her 10th tour title, overall her second of this year. She defeated Ekaterina Alexandrova in the championship by a score of 3-6, 6-love, 6-2. I was very impressed with Elena in this match and how she was able to turn it around. That second set in particular was just money, and she activated the business bun for the first few games of that set and just kept that momentum going for the rest of the match. And it was overall a really strong tournament, especially that semifinal beatdown over Paolini, where she only dropped 5 games. And speaking of Paolini, Elena rises to number 7, which is right behind Jasmine in the rankings. Now, Paolini, she did clinch her spot in the WTA Finals in Riyadh, so props to her for that, for being able to back up another strong season that she had in 2024. Now, that leaves Elena Rybakina and Mira Andreeva to battle for the last 8th spot in Riyadh. And right now, Rybakina trails Andreeva in the race at number 9. However, Elena can surpass Mira if she reaches the Tokyo semifinals. In order to do this, Elena just has to win 2 matches, although her draw is not the easiest. She could face Leylah Fernandez in the second round, who beat her in DC, and then in the quarterfinals, she could face Victoria Mboko, who beat her in Montreal, or she could face Eva Lise, who beat her in Beijing. So still definitely not an easy draw for Rybakina. Very much doable, but still it's not a walk in the park for her. Mboko and Fernandez both have interesting openers, by the way, against Bianca Andreescu and Maria Sakkari, respectively. Let me know in the comments if you think Rybakina will make the semifinals in Tokyo. I am a bit surprised that Mira didn't go ahead and play in Tokyo. Maybe she thought that Maddie would ultimately be unfit to compete in Riyadh, as Keys hasn't played since the US Open, so there's a chance that she pulls out last minute. Or Mira maybe is just mentally checked out and doesn't even care if she qualifies or not. She is riding a 3-match losing streak at the moment, and she has struggled a lot since Wimbledon. I do think Andreeva fares better when she faces off against tougher opposition, not named Coco Gauff, so maybe she can have a good run in Riyadh if she does eventually qualify. Now, speaking of Japan, I gotta give a shout out to Leylah Fernandez on winning her 5th tour title in Osaka. She defeated 18-year-old Czech qualifier Teresa Valentova 6-love, 5-7, 6-3. Valentova, by the way, is going to be a player to watch for sure in 2026. Daniil Medvedev finally ended his 882-day title drought when he defeated Corentin Moutet 7-5, 4-6, 6-3 in the Almaty final. This was a really fun and epic final that lasted 2.5 hours. I highly recommend you watch the replay of that. But yeah, Medvedev's last title before this one was Rome 2023, so it's been a while, and Medi, he has now won all 21 of his titles in 21 different cities, so I'm glad that that trend continued as well. And I knew that a title was coming from Medi sooner rather than later. He's been playing really strong tennis since the US Open, where he split with his longtime coach, Joe Savara, and then hired Thomas Johannesson, and I think that move was a good move for him overall. And now Medvedev is at 13 in the live race to Turin. He's really at 11 though, with Draper and Rune being out for the rest of the season. In front of Medvedev right now is Casper Ruud, who picked up his 12th 250 level title and 14th overall with the trophy in Stockholm. Ruud dominated Ugo Humbert 6-2, 6-3 in the championship, and Casper looked sharp all week. He beat some quality players too, in Marin Cilic, Sebastian Korda, and Denis Shapovalov in the semifinal. Now above Ruud in the ATP race to Turin is Felix-Auger Aliassime, who earned his 3rd title of the season and 8th overall when he took down Yuri Lehechka 7-6, 6-7, 6-2 in the Brussels championship. Yuri was the only top 50 player that Felix played last week, but still gotta give credit to Felix for getting the job done and beating whoever was across the net, so props to him again on another successful title run. And this is Felix's 7th indoor hard court title, so clearly he loves these type of conditions. The win, of course, also boosts FAA's Turin hopes a little bit more, as he's now 8 in the live race, trailing Lorenzo Musetti by 340 points. But the good news for Felix is that he's now competing in his beloved Basel tournament, where he is a 2-time champion. Speaking of the Swiss indoors tournament, Americans Taylor Fritz and Ben Shelton are the top 2 seeds. Taylor has a very intriguing opening round match against Shanghai winner Valentin Vachereau. Fritz would then meet the winner of Sebastian Korda and Ugo Humbert in the second round, and then he's projected to face Yuri Lehechka in the quarterfinals and Casper Ruud in the semifinals. So not an easy draw for the American. The defending champion, Giovanni Impecci-Pedicard, will open against Joao Fonseca. Now, Giovanni could fall outside the top 50 if he does not make the quarterfinals here in Switzerland. Jakub Menjik and Denis Shapovalov are there as well. And got to give a shout out to 18-year-old Henri Bernet. He made his non-Davis Cup Tour Level main draw debut with a solid 7-6, 6-7, 6-3 defeats to Jakub Menjik. He's a very talented Swiss player with a one-handed backhand. I think he's going to be another player to watch out for in 2026. Then in the bottom half of the draw, you have the all-Canadian matchup between Felix-Auger Aliassime and Gabriel Diallo. These two are really good friends, it seems, and this will be their first tour-level meeting, so I'm very excited to see how that one unfolds. And then Ben Shelton, last year's runner-up, opens against Kamil Majchek, but Shelton has a tricky second-round match ahead of him against Jean-Marie Munar, who has beaten him already twice in straight sets this year. If I'm going to give a prediction for Basel, I think a Canadian is going to take it. So it's going to be between, for me, Shapovalov, Auger Aliassime, and Diallo. I think that Auger Aliassime Diallo first round match could be big in deciding the ultimate winner. But I think I actually might be going with an rather outside-the-box pick and having Shapovalov take the title. Now, Jannik Sinner, he also lifted some hardware this weekend at the Six King Slam. And although it wasn't a tour-level title, Jannik took home another $6 million paycheck, the same amount he earned last year when he won the title in 2024. Once more, he defeated Carlos Alcaraz in the final, but this time he won with a decisive 6-1, 6-4 scoreline. I watched a little bit of the action, and Jannik does look a bit sharper, particularly on serve, where he's made some clear adjustments post US Open, especially with that elbow positioning. The Italian seeks his 22nd tour title this week in Vienna as the top seed. And Sinner, though, he does have a pretty tricky draw. He will open against Daniel Altmaier before facing the winner of Flavio Cobolli and Tomas Machac in round 2, and then he could potentially face off against Alexander Bublik in the quarterfinal. Medvedev, Musetti, and Zverev are all in the bottom half, and we do have an intriguing opening round battle between the single-handers and Lorenzo and Stefano Tsitsipas, so definitely going to keep an eye out on that one. I think that we will see another Sinner Medvedev. That will be a repeat of the 2023 final, which Sinner took, and I will also have the same outcome happen here with Jannik lifting the trophy. Side note, Jannik will not be leading Italy for next month's Davis Cup Finals. He basically said, we already won it back-to-back, and I want to use that week to prep even earlier for the more important three-peat on the line, the Australian Open. So I think that's a great decision from Jannik. To do that. Team Italy, though, still has a solid team with Lorenzo Musetti, Flavio Cobolli, and Matteo Berrettini in the singles lineup. I also think Spain with Carlos Alcaraz and Jean-Marie Munar, as well as Czechia, Germany, and France, they have some solid teams, although there seem to be a few sneaks, namely Austria, Belgium, and Argentina, but those teams maybe could do something and surprise me. We never know. Now, to end this video, I want to talk about Frances Tiafoe, as the American made some big announcements last week. First, Frances shut down his entire 2025 season. He was supposed to play a few more indoor tournaments, but he said no mas. And then also, Tiafoe will be doing a complete overhaul of his entire team, including his coaches, David Witt and Jordi Arconada. The Arconada split was really interesting to me because Jordi had been in Tiafoe's coaching box for over 5 years, and he first started as Frances's hitting partner, and then he worked his way up to be an assistant coach of some sorts. And he and Jordi are pretty close friends as they came up together training at JTCC. So I think this shows that Frances is very serious about wanting to take those steps to win a slam. I do think his time with Witt had run its course. They had some good moments together, namely when they first started working together in July 2024. They had success very soon after. Tiafoe made the Cincinnati Open Finals and the US Open semifinals, but his form kind of dipped after that. He did make the Roland Garros quarterfinals, which was pretty much his only notable big highlight of the season. He finished with a 26-23 record in 2025 and ended the year with a 5-match losing streak. I'm not entirely sure about Frances ending his season early. He could have used the remaining tournaments as a preseason type of thing, and maybe it could have been a good way to end his season on a high note. But I do think Frances could have aided from a mental reset, so I understand. And this was his first season since 2021 where he did not end inside the top 20, as he's currently ranked 29 in the world. So I think something had to change. Tiafoe will be turning 28 in January, so it's a pivotal part of his career as well. I think we can all agree the biggest thing for Frances is just him needing to have consistent deep runs outside Houston and then summer North American hardcourt swing. And I will be intrigued to see how he does for the Aussie swing. He does run the risk of being unseeded for the Australian Open, which is another reason why I was surprised that he just shut down his season. But, you know, if he comes back stronger, the ranking might not even matter, and the results might speak for themselves, so you never know. Now, Tiafoe was not the only star to end their season early, as Naomi Osaka, she sustained a left leg injury during her round of 16 win over Suzanne Lemmens in Osaka, and she ultimately was forced to withdraw from her quarterfinal in Osaka, as well as the tournaments in Tokyo and Hong Kong. Naomi currently sits at number 16 in the rankings, and she will probably finish the season inside the top 20, so overall, a good season for her, a very positive step from where she ended in 2024. Emma Raducanu, she also withdrew from Hong Kong and Tokyo. The Asian swing for her has been played with illnesses and tough 3-set losses. Still, I think this was a successful 2025 season for the Brit. She started the year outside the top 60, and she now is ranked 29 in the world. So she's in a solid position to be seeded for the Australian Open. You never know what could happen in the first few weeks of the year. Emma will also stick with Francisco de Rooij as her coach, who started working with her in the summer hardcourt swing. So intrigued to see how Emma does for next year as well. That is all I have for this update video, and let me know your thoughts on Holger's devastating injury and whether you think that there does need to be a change on the tour overall to maybe prevent more injuries like this from happening. I don't know if Holger's injury was related to the grind of the tour, but you know, it's always worth a discussion. Also, let me know in the comments how you think Frances, Naomi, and Emma will fare in 2026. Again, make sure you all subscribe and click the notification bell so you are notified whenever I post my next Christians Court report. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support, and I will see you all next time here on Christians Court.